What I'm doing today is installing a DTE differential brace into a 2005 Corvette C6 base model. The first thing I did was go ahead and pre-prepare some of the parts. It says in the instructions to glue together some of the washers 3 at a time like this. These are actually going to sandwich between here and the transmission. And I've already pre-assembled my struts as well. Those are inside at the moment because I figure I'm going to go ahead and start by installing these pieces here. So I'm going to assume that you know how to jack the car up, support it on jack stands, all that good stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. As you can see, it's pretty tight quarters up in here. These are the bolts on the driver's side of the transmission that need to be removed. You've got that one there, and there's one way back there that you kind of can't really see because the light is not getting up in there properly. It's starting to get dark and I'm already working with a light down here. So you're going to remove those 2 bolts, place that metal piece there into position, put those washers that I showed you before between the plate and the transmission, and use the supplied bolts from DTE to go ahead and tighten that on there. Once you do that, you're going to move to the other side and do the same thing way up in there, but now you've got these wires in the way, so that ought to make it even more fun. But yeah, that's where you start. Alright, so after a little bit of creativeness and using some extensions and everything, I was able to get the old bolts out, put the brace in, and put the new bolts in. Now I'm going to go around to the other side, do the same thing. So after bear hugging the transmission for a while and getting real close and intimate with it, I've got both sides in. Obviously you can see this one was the more pain in the butt side because there's just all kinds of wires, plugs, wiring harness, the emergency brake stuff is right up there as well. There's just all kinds of stuff in the way here. It is kind of a pain. You're going to have to get a little bit creative to do it, but it can be done because I did it. There you have it. Now for the next part, they recommend that you remove the mufflers, drop the cradle, all that stuff. I did not do that, and I'm not going to do that because I feel that I can get it installed without doing that. However, I will say that I've got MagnaFlows installed back here. That gives me a little bit more room to work with as far as seeing what I'm doing and everything, because it really is hard to see what you're doing from the side, and there's probably, with the factory mufflers installed, probably not a lot of room to get in there. So if you were going to do it with the factory mufflers in place, it might be a little bit more difficult, and you'd probably have to do it all by feel, which would take a lot more time. But I'm going to do it this way. I think it'll work. Now for the next part, they recommend that you remove the mufflers, drop the cradle, all that stuff. I did not do that, and I'm not going to do that because I feel that I can get it installed without doing that. However, I will say that I've got MagnaFlows installed back here. That gives me a little bit more room to work with as far as seeing what I'm doing and everything, because it really is hard to see what you're doing from the side, and there's probably, with the factory mufflers installed, probably not a lot of room to get in there. So if you were going to do it with the factory mufflers in place, it might be a little bit more difficult, and you'd probably have to do it all by feel, which would take a lot more time. But I'm going to do it this way. I think it'll work. Right, so before I was mistaken about which bolt to take out and where to start and all that. I'm pretty sure that I told you to start at this bolt, which is on the very bottom right by the spring, and count 5 from that. But actually you start from the bolt that's one above that and take 5 out, go all the way around. So I got all the bolts out, got this side of the brace in. I haven't tightened the bolts yet because you've got to put that strut that goes from one side to the other side. So I want to leave the bolts loose until I actually get the other side on and get that strut in there, and then I'll tighten everything down. One other thing to note is that they aren't labeled left and right. The left side has the triangle notch cut out on it right there. So that's how you can tell the left from the right. It didn't tell me in the instructions from DTE, so that's how you can tell. Alright, moving on to the next side. So I'm back, finishing the install on the DTE differential brace on the back of my Corvette. I had to stop and remove the exhaust pipe that was on this side, because when they welded the exhaust in, I have MagnaFlows welded in, I guess they had the pipe that was on the side rotated a little bit too far this way, and it wasn't allowing enough clearance for this plate that kind of sticks up right here. So I had to take that out. I'm going to have to cut it and re-weld it to get it to fit in there. It's going to be a little bit of a process, but I will tell you that with the muffler out of the way, it is a lot easier to work here. So if you don't mind popping the exhaust out of the car, that's definitely probably the easiest way to do it, because it gives you a lot more clearance. I mean, you can see here how this is all open and you can access the bolts very easily, whereas over on this side there's not a whole lot of room to get a wrench up in there, not a whole lot of room to work at all really. It's pretty tight up in there, so it's a lot more easy to do this if the exhaust pipe is removed from the car. I'm running into a little bit of an issue here. It looks like this isn't quite notched out just right, and this plate doesn't want to go down. I'm going to try to tighten it a little bit and see if it'll just kind of pop into place. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I will let you guys know. Alright, so we've got everything installed. I just put the strut braces in, adjusted those, tightened those down, put the lock nuts in there, get those bad boys all snugged up. The instructions from DTE said that what you were going to do to adjust these is start on the driver's side and then go to the passenger side. And what you're going to do first is adjust it to what they call zero lash, which is essentially just hand tightening them until you can't tighten them by hand anymore. So hand tighten it, make sure they're pulling, make sure the strut rods are pulling the two pieces together between the transmission and the differential. Make sure it's pulling together. So hand tighten that, driver's side first, then passenger side. Once you've got it hand tight, come back and use the hexagonal shaped portion of the rod right there to tighten it up. It says to do it in 1/4 turn increments, starting on the driver's side again. So turn it 1/4 turn driver's side, 1/4 turn passenger side, 1/4 turn driver's side, passenger side, so on and so forth until you get to 3/4 turns on both sides. And then that's it. I'm going to go ahead and go around to the back, show you what it looks like from back there. That way you get a good idea as to exactly what everything should look like when it's all in there. And here's what everything looks like as promised from the rear of the vehicle. You can get a good idea as to what's going on, how everything should look. And there we have it. All done. Enjoy.